Hey y'all, Biohack here. Today we got the start of the Lunar Deck of Fate event, which is going to allow us to pick up 100 fragments for Fatalis Blademaster, who is the Void champion that's been part of the crossover between Monster Hunter and Raid. And he's a fairly interesting champion. He's got an amazing kit, which we'll go over in just a second, with the major caveat that his multipliers are very low and he's an HP based nuker. So he's sort of viewed kind of poorly by the community, and I can't say I completely disagree, but I've been really torn about whether or not I actually want to go for this event. So first, let's go over Fatalis. Let's talk about his kit, and then let's talk about how I think I would want to use him. And then we'll talk about how much it's going to cost to get him if that's something you're interested in, and whether or not I think I'm actually going to go for it. So first things first, I imagine most of you guys at this point have probably seen his kit if you're interested in this champion at all, so we won't spend too much time on this. But his A1 is very solid. It ignores 15% of the target's defense if it's a crit, and it has a 20% chance of granting an extra turn. It's not amazing, but 20% chance of granting an extra turn is definitely a very nice ability to have on a kit, similar to something like Rotos. His A2 is where it starts to get interesting. This is probably the defining aspect of his kit in terms of why someone might want to go for this champion. Its attacks one enemy, will ignore Strengthen, Stone Skin, Shield, Increase Defense, and Ally Protection, and also ignores 15% of the target's defense if this attack is critical. If this ability ignored Shield, I would think it was even a lot stronger than it currently is. Because it doesn't ignore Shield, it means it sounds like a great Necrit counter, right? But the problem is, without that ignore Shield aspect, the target Necrit protects gets a huge shield placed on them whenever you attack them. And so not ignoring that is a big issue for killing that target. Probably about half of the tinkiness that Necrit provides an ally that he's protecting is actually coming from the shield, and the other half is from these other things like the ally protection and the strengthen and the increased defense that he puts on them. So I don't know. It's an interesting ability, but it basically, what appeals to me about this ability is the counter to Stone Skin, and we'll talk about how I want to use that in the future and where I think he would slot in. Let's go over the rest of his kit first. So his A3 attacks all enemies, ignores 15% of the target's defense if this attack is critical. It has this decrease the target's defense by 5% as well. Honestly, this is embarrassing because it only stacks up to 30%, which isn't bad, but it's 5% every time he hits. That means you would have to activate this ability 6 times to fully decrease their defense by the max 30%. That's just insane. Like, I won't even hit a Hydra head 6 times before it's decapitated and respawns. Like, this is wild. You're never going to get this all the way up. So that's unfortunate. This should be at least like a 10% like it is over here, but even 10% is kind of low. Ideally, it'd be like 15, so you only have to hit him twice or something. But anyway, that's a part of his kit. The other, actually, probably the hardest hitting ability in his entire kit is his secret ability. So the way this works is you have to use 3 other abilities in order to activate this. I think that might also apply to counterattacks and things like that. And so it's also nice that he gets that 20% chance of his A1, because it does mean he gets around to this more often. This ability ignores 50% of the target's defense and fills his turn meter by 50% if it's critical. Cannot be reduced by passives or masteries. This is huge for dealing with Taurus, but to be honest, I don't think this is a particularly good champion for fighting Taurus teams. And then the damage inflicted by the skill cannot be increased by this champion's masteries or allied passive skills, except when attacking bosses. And then it just activates on his every 3 turns, or every 3 abilities, like I said. And his other passive, actually right here, is really nice. Places a shield buff on this champion equal to 25% of their max HP for 2 turns at the end of their turn. This champion cannot receive critical hits while under the shield buff placed by this champion. That is actually huge. Not being able to get crit definitely makes him very strong for dealing with, nukers being really hard to kill. Unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, I don't know. The important thing to note about this kit is he has to place a shield on himself, which means he needs to take a turn in order to do this. I think you can also build him in like a divine life or something like that to also get this effect. But importantly, things like bolster and other kinds of shields will not prevent the crits. It has to be something placed by him. So how do we think we'd actually want to use this champion? I am actually kind of interested in picking this guy up. I know his multipliers are bad, and I know that a number of content creators, including Drock and MTG Jedi and Scratch, have all done videos showcasing just how bad this champion's damage is. But unfortunately, I don't feel like they really used him in the best use case for him. Drock kind of mentioned it in his video, but they all like take him into teams with UDK on it and then do his single target on UDK. It's like that's like it's like using Rotos on a team with UDK in it and then complaining that Rotos is garbage. It's like you can't use him on that kind of team. What kind of teams is he actually good for? I think he's really, really good for dealing with teams that run squishy nukers in Stone Skin. So with the advent of Stone Skin accessories, we're seeing this more and more and more, where people will build like a Georgid in 4-piece Stone Skin with 2 accessories and 4-piece lethal, right? Or a Baron, or an Errol, or whatever. You see it all the time. I even see people building Wukong in 1-turn Stone Skin. I see people building like Ragash in 1-turn Stone Skin. If you have the right Stone Skin accessories, lots of times it's worth it to build even squishy nukers in 1-turn Stone Skin, because then you can start using them and go second teams and that kind of thing. And so for me on my account, I have a Georgid, which is a massive counter to all the squishy nukers in Stone Skin and Stone Skin in general. But sometimes, every once in a while, you run into a scenario where someone basically brings like 2 squishy nukers in Stone Skin. And if you can't actually kill all the way through the Stone Skin to take them out, even Georgid doesn't really work in Live Arena with double Stone Skin nukers, especially if you're running like a squishy go first team and they have, a Rhonda and a Wukong both in Stone Skin. You might just die if you don't kill them both on the first turn. And so that's what I want to use Fatalis Blademaster to deal with. Essentially teams where I know, because I record all the players I fight and whether or not they have their champions in Stone Skin or not, I know they're running double squishy nukers in Stone Skin. I can bring him in to take them out with this A2 ability. And in fact, if you don't have Georgid or Ileal or another champion who can deal with Stone Skin, I think that ups the value of this champion a lot, because you're not gonna, like I said, you do not want to use this champion against the Taurus, Harima, tanky teams. You don't want to do that. You want to use this champion against squishy teams that are relying on Stone Skin to keep their champions alive. And I think he can be pretty good with that, because even though he doesn't hit very hard, you don't have to hit very hard to kill a Georgian, right? As long as you can hit through the Stone Skin, you can kill him. And so that's what I want to bring him in for. Basically, that's what it comes down to. I don't think I'll use him a lot, but every once in a while, I run into a scenario where I'm like, shoot, if they ban my Georgian right here, or if they ban my Warlord, which is my lockout, I might be able to kill one of the nukers with Stone Skin, but then the other Stone Skin nuker is going to take my whole team out when it gets a turn, because I'm not going to be able to kill them both. So that's the idea. That's what I think I'm going to use them for. Let's talk about now the unfortunate thing, which is how expensive it is to finish this Lunar Deck of Fate event. So we need 40,000 points to open all of the cards. There's 40 cards on the page here, and you need 1,000 points per card. There are 21 cards containing fragments for Fatalis Blademaster. And that's important, because I feel like a lot of people like are surprised when they have to open all of the cards to get the champion, and you shouldn't be. Like, that's not rigged. Like, that's what was going to happen the majority of the time. The way I like to think about it is, think about the last card you open, right? What is the probability that the very last card you open contains fragments? Because that's the thing about these events. You need all of the fragments, all 100 fragments. And so it doesn't matter if there's like the whole thing they do with like, oh, the rares contain, 3 and the legendaries contain 5 or whatever, whatever it is. It doesn't matter, because you have to open every single fragment card. There are 21 fragment cards and there's 40 cards on the deck. That means over 50% of people are going to open a fragment card on their very last card. That's just straight up how it is. And 75% of people, over 75% of people, are going to open up a fragment card in their last 1 or 2 cards. So if you plan on going for this event, you need to plan on going for every single card, because you are more likely than not going to need to open every single one. And even if you don't need to open every single one, you're going to need to open all but like 2 or all but 3. There's very, very few people that are going to get away with only opening like 36 cards. And every time you take it down by 1 card, you can cut that number in half. So that's just the reality of this situation. You have to open all the cards. Unfortunately, they nerfed the amount of points that you get from shards. So if we look at the Kaja Deck of Fate event, the Deck of Fate event, it was the first one that came out. Oh, they call this one Deck of Fate too, yeah. Okay. Deck of Fate, if we look at Kaja, it was 2,000 points per Sacred Shard, 40 shards, it's about 20 shards each. For this, it's only 1,600 points per sacred shard, which means you need to open 25 sacreds to get this champion. That is brutal. That is one of the worst, if not the worst. I can't remember how many you need for the Roxanne. I think Roxanne might have even needed like 30 or something like that. But that is borderline the worst we've ever had for an event like this. And to be honest, he's not the best champion in the game. I do think he's probably a little better than people who tried to use him against Stoneskin, UDK, and Taurus and Marichka think he is, but he's not amazing, right? He's definitely got a fairly niche use in the arena. I probably will use him from time to time, but he won't be like my number one most picked champion by a long shot. So I don't know. Is it worth it? Pulling that many shards? Maybe not. The other thing, though, is that you can do it with Dungeon Divers. And honestly, this is what I think I'm going to do. If you do it from Dungeon Divers, you need to run about 48,000 energy on hard 10. If you run stage 20, you can get away with, I think, like 40,000 energy. I strongly would not recommend that if you can avoid it. Raid is a game that is mostly about gear and like 25% about champions. It's 75% gear, 25% champions. And you get much better gear farming hard 10 than stage 20 in the dungeons. So yes, it's a little more energy to farm 10, but I think it's absolutely worth it. And that's what I intend to do. I think I'm going to try and get almost all of this done purely by Dungeon Divers, which means farming about 2,500 dungeon runs over the next 3 days, which is going to be rough. If I did it in Spider, where I run about a minute long runs because I duo it with Mithrala and Akhamtum, that'll let me double dip and get the champion training event done as well. But it does mean it's about 40 hours of running Spider nonstop. So I'm probably going to be doing that like basically constantly for the next 3 days. I'll obviously use RSL Helper to help with that a lot. Overnight, I'll probably run Dragon because I can do that with out presets, so I can swap in food and that kind of thing. But that's the plan. It's probably going to cost about 12,000 gems worth of energy, which is pretty nuts. I think it's like $170 worth of energy if I was going to buy it, which is a lot. But you do get all the gear. You do get all the silver from farming the gear. I'm going to level up a ton of champions, which is going to get me through the champ training. And we'll get this guy and hopefully be able to use him at least a little bit. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm going to do. Those are my thoughts on the champion. If you don't have anyone who cuts through Stone Skin, that can be a really, really important thing to have in live arena. So it might be worth going for this guy if you can, even though his masteries suck. Just don't plan on having him be your number one most picked champion. Like, you use him as a niche counter pick to people with squishy nukers and Stone Skin. You don't bring him in against Taurus. You don't bring him against Harima. You don't bring him against UDK. You're looking to beat squishy teams using Stone Skin nukers with this guy. They're going to show up a lot more now that those accessories are in the game, but that's what you want to use them for. Unfortunately, none of the videos really showcase him being used properly that exists currently, so maybe I'll have to do something similar to like what I did with Quintus if we get this guy and I end up liking him and end up using him a bunch. But for now, just keep that in mind. Like, this is not a guy you want to fight Stone Skin tanky teams with. You want to fight squishy teams with him. All right, that's going to be it. I will see you all in the next one. Cheers. Oh, one more thing. I'm going to upload this video probably in the next like half an hour or so, and then I'll probably be doing a live stream on my Twitch video channel, and now I've been also adding in the Raid channel as well. So check out the live stream in a little bit if you see this right away, and I will see you in the next one.